This handsome face that you see of this young man is Flying Officer Owen Rowe of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And he's with us today, years later, to share his story as one of the many Caribbean war veterans that served this country and others. And Owen, I thank you very, very much for being in studio with us. We had you here before, and I said you had to come back and bring some of your buddies with you. And
I sure did.
We'll be meeting some of them a little later on.
Correct.
On this, as we celebrate Remembrance Day, or commemorate Remembrance Day. Yes. When we think of Remembrance Day, we often think of that poem in Flanders Field, which is a very, very important poem.
Of course.
But we're looking at it from a West Indian perspective this week, and I thought we'd start off by hearing a poem that you wrote.
Okay.
So will you share, what is it called?
It's called Soldier's Farewell, and it wrote itself. So powerful were my emotions that the words came out, and these were the words.
Okay.
Land of my birth, O dearest earth, beneath whose shining skies I toil, I must now leave thy sacred soil and risk my blood on foreign lands to save thee from the harsh demands which tyrants heartless would impose, if none to freedom's call arose. I go with warm tears in my eyes, for I shall miss thy smiling skies, the rapture of thy myriad stars, those festive nights with soft guitars, my love, and all that I hold dear, which just in dreams can now be near. Land of my birth, so filled with mirth, I go, and I may not return, but fires of my love shall burn for thee bright as thy noonday sun, sure as a victory to be won.
And you wrote that back in 1942, was it?
May the 13th, 1942. It wrote itself.
It's very powerful stuff.
Thank you.
And I would assume it brings out the sentiments of others.
It epitomized the driving force between all of us coming up.
One would ask, I mean, it's a very noble thing, but one would ask, you know, why come to a foreign land to, in essence, be part of somebody else's military to fight somebody else's war?
Okay, but you see, we were part of the empire. We were very loyal to Britain, as it were, and the doors to Britain, there were too many of us, and Canada was a Commonwealth country, and we had established very long, lengthy trade links and other links with Canada, so why not Canada? So a Canadian, whose picture you will see later on, Henry Collier, liaised with relevant departments and got an okay for us to come up, if we passed the medical.
Yeah, he's saying Mr. Collier.
Man, yes.
This man here?
H.C. Collier, who was Secretary of the Canada-West Indian League and editor of the Canada-West Indies magazine. And he liaised with the Canadian military here and with the branch in the West Indies and got permission for us to come up there, provided that we passed the medical when we arrived here.
And it should be noted for our younger viewers that, of course, you mentioned being part of the empire. Most of the Caribbean countries that are now independent were, of course, still part of Britain before. They were not independent at the time of the war.
That's right. They were actually colonies. They were actually colonies at that time.
Now, tell us about your own story when you came out of Barbados, basically.
Yeah.
And became part of the Canadian military.
Okay, but I was a school teacher in Barbados, and my father, who missed out being involved in World War I because he was too young, and he always regretted that, and he thought that in going also, it would also make him very happy and very proud. Well, what you see there is now, in the military, I had an athletic, they allowed me to do athletics too, and I won a lightweight boxing championship of the military establishment and knocked out an American, I think, when I won that cup, lightweight championship of the Edmonton military establishment.
Taking a chance to damage that pretty face?
I was very quick with my reflexes were very, very keen, that I explained. So this guy asked for it, he was open, I just whacked him.
Okay. Now, years later, of course, as we do in this program right now, dealing with Remembrance Day, a lot is being done to remember those who have fallen, unfortunately, in the previous wars. And here's a picture with you. This was, I believe, with Senator Ann Cools.
She happens to be a Barbadian, you know. She is in the Canadian Senate. And she walked up with me as I laid the wreath at the cenotaph in the millennium year. And the Canadian Legion must be thanked for giving us that permission. So they endorsed the role which we West Indians played in World War II.
We have another picture.
There's another one of us that's walking towards the placing of the wreath.
And this is where again?
It's taken at the Cenotaph in Ottawa, at the National War Memorial in Ottawa on Remembrance Day, the year 2000.
Okay. Now, I would assume, you know, just by the part of the problem is the fact that, well, the numbers are dwindling. You know, the war years are many years ago.
Just a few left now.
Do you guys still get together?
Yes, we get together informally. We don't have the association that we had formally before. We had about 40 members. Now, only about 6 of us are left. That's all that's left now.
We had a picture, which we'll get to a little later on, which goes back to 1964, which is, I guess, the first time you guys got together.
Oh, yes, when I convened that meeting, of course.
We'll show that when we have some of your friends in here with us.
That's right.
When you first came out from Barbados to train here, there's a natural fear and apprehension coming out and just going to new land. But not only you're going to new land, you're going to war.
Yes, going to war.
What did that feel like?
Of course, we were so imbued with patriotic zeal, you know, and the German submarines were shelling the ships in the sea lanes, and so we were really pretty keen to get out there and put these people in their place, you know. So that overrode all the other considerations, you know. And if you're showing the Shadow of Liberty later on, I will comment on that perhaps. Okay. It was a very rigorous trip across from Barbados, first to Halifax, to New York and so on, you know.
By sea?
By sea, yes. And then by rail to Montreal, and then we were being enlisted.
Well, it's a fascinating story. We want to meet some of your friends who are with us today.
They will, yes.
We'll hear some of their story as well. And you'll stick around as well, right?
I'll comment, yes.
And you'll comment?
Sure.
Owen Rowe, who is a flying officer, the Royal Canadian Air Force. And we'll speak with Owen and some of your compatriots. We'll take a break here on Soul Call as we remember. Don't go away.
Okay.
Welcome back to Soul Call as we remember on this Remembrance Day show. The picture you're seeing right now is of Sergeant Graham Nurse. This is the one fellow that we had invited into the program, but unfortunately he's a little under the weather, so he couldn't be with us this week. But Owen, tell us a little bit about Sergeant Graham Nurse.
Sergeant Graham Nurse was born in Barbados in 1916, I think it was. He spent 8 years in the volunteer service there and the national service. Came here to Canada, enlisted in 1941. He took his training in Three Rivers, where he became a specialist in the Sten gun, the Bren gun, the Vickers, and other guns. And then, when he was about to go overseas, they said, hey, this man is too precious to let him go overseas. Let's keep him, let him train officers here. And that's what he did at Three Rivers for a long time.
And we should point out, which is very important, that he didn't actually go to war, but he did have a very important role.
And vital role.
A vital role in training others who did go, and that's just as important as those who went.
Because it's a team effort. The war winning was a team effort.
And we're sorry that he can't be with us on the program this week, but we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
We do have another person here with us in studio, this gentleman, and his name is Leo Riviera, and Leo is a Canadian Merchant Navy man. We welcome you to studio. How are you, sir?
Oh, holding on to life.
Thanks for coming in and being on the program with us. And you originally came out from Barbados as well.
Out from Barbados.
What is your story in being part of Canada's military? And I see you're well decorated as well.
Yes. I joined a Canadian merchant ship around 1936 because sailing was my love.
Oh, okay.
In 1941, I was on board the Canadian ship Lady Hawkins, which was torpedoed on the 19th of January.
Now, we don't have an actual ship, a picture of the ship.
1942.
Okay. Now this
Lady Hawkins was an identical ship of this design. This is the sister ship.
This is the Lady Nelson?
Yeah.
Okay. So a similar ship to this was torpedoed.
Yeah, the Lady Hawkins. On the 19th of January 1942. German submarine struck 2 torpedoes in the forepart of the ship, and approximately in 20 minutes, she turned on her port side and shot forward and sunk. I was fortunate to be in a lifeboat with 76 people. 6 died in the lifeboat, including my brother, Austin Riveira.
I think we have a picture. This is your brother?
This is my brother.
Okay.
And it was at that moment that I became very concerned as to the future. We spent 5 days adrift in the lifeboat. We were picked up on the 5th night on a passenger ship called the Coamo, bound for Puerto Rico. We arrived at Puerto Rico, and I was pretty well knocked out, delirious, and I am sure that I would have passed out that night.
It must have been a terrifying situation, especially considering you lost your own flesh and blood, your own brother, in that same situation. At what point, you were out there 5 days.
5 days.
When did your brother die?
He died the 2nd night from exposure, because it was the 19th of January. It was pretty cold. We didn't have any clothes or so on, and we had to stay, most of us. There were 11 West Indian boys in the lifeboat. 1 died, the other 5, some were Canadians and some were Americans.
And you buried the men at sea?
Yes, we put them over at sea. The chief officer's name was Captain Kelly. He said, bring him up. He said, put him over. I assisted in putting him over. We had a missionary lady by the name of Mrs. Parkinson. She lost her husband when they jumped, and she survived. And she said a prayer, and they raised a little hymn. At that point then, I started to cry. I had another brother, older brother, Orville, and he told me to cheer up. So we went into Puerto Rico, and I was taken to the School of Tropical Medicine, delirious and frostbite. And I spent some time there. When I came out, I stayed in a hotel. Then an American transport ship decided to take me. Well, we went to St. Lucia.
Right. So back to the Caribbean.
Not going back to Barbados. But while at St. Lucia, they were about to transfer me to the Lady Nelson to go on to Barbados. And that's when a German submarine came into St. Lucia Harbor and sunk the Lady Nelson.
Now, you mentioned you lost one brother.
Yeah.
You mentioned an older brother?
Yeah.
Were you all in the military?
3 of us in the Merchant Navy.
3 of you?
On the ship.
How well did this go over with your family? 3 boys all going off to war.
Well, we didn't consider this as going to war. It was a way of living for years in Barbados, sailing in ships. Barbadians are noted seafarers. And most of us were on those ships sailing even before the war started.
Now, the ship we showed, the one we showed in the picture, and I'll hold it up again, this was, if I'm not mistaken,
This here is the Lady Nelson. After she was sunk in St. Lucia, she was taken out, repaired, and she became Canada's hospital ship. She brought home many of the war brides.
And was this one of the only hospital ships?
That I know of. In Canada, we didn't have a lot of merchant ships left around then.
And it brought over war brides, which is another fascinating part of the war, because the women who came out marrying men who were in the military, another very interesting aspect, and I think we'll hear some of that when we hear with Dion later on.
Yeah.
When you think of the sacrifices, primarily that you personally suffered, you know, 5 days out at sea, losing your brother the way you did, you look back on the situation and the whole concept of war. What are your thoughts? Was the effort worth it? Was it an important fight to fight?
Well, I always felt that bravery is displayed through ignorance. That was my opinion. But as far as seagoing is concerned, I learned that the sea has given more to man than it has taken from him.
Interesting sentiments indeed.
Yes.
Fascinating story. I thank you for being on the program with us, Leo.
I'm happy to be here.
And thank you for being here, Owen. You're going to stick around. We have some more military men we're going to meet as we continue remembering here on CH on Soul Call. Don't go away, Leo. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Soul Call. We have in studio with us now 2 more military men who served this country greatly. We have with us, to see the picture that I'm holding up right now, this is Corporal Bert Wharton.
Oh, no, private.
Private, I'm sorry. I gave you a commission there. And also Warrant Officer Vince Cadogan. And those are the 2 pictures you see right now. And here are the gentlemen in studio with us now. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us on Soul Call and sharing your story. Now, first of all, Bert, you come from Barbados, and
Barbados.
Also, all Barbadians today on the program. Barbados is represented well.
Yes.
What is your stories? How did you come out of Barbados and become part of the military?
Well, after I left high school, I had a job working at the government laboratory. And my brother worked there, so I went there to work there after I left school. And it wasn't a very exciting job, so when the opportunity came up for me to join the Canadian Forces, I volunteered, and that was it.
Okay.
I was accepted, and I came up here with Owen Rowe and your uncle.
Wilbert Holder?
That's right. And 36 other chaps. And I was the youngest of the group.
Any apprehension in becoming part of this and leaving home and going to a foreign country and then fighting a war in a foreign land?
No, no apprehension. The only really unfortunate aspect of the whole thing, prior to my going overseas, I was asked to stay on guard duty in Farnham because I was in the infantry. And there was a detachment going overseas at that time. And every time there's a detachment being prepared to go overseas, the people who are scheduled to go are kept in a special barracks, and you have to stand on guard in case they change their mind, decide to go AWOL. So I was on duty that night, and was in January, and the temperature was about 30 below zero.
Ooh.
And for 2 hours I stood up there and I cried like a baby. It was so cold. And that's one of the worst experiences I've had since I left home.
And coming from a warm climate, too, not even used to the concept of 30 degrees
true.
below.
That's true.
What about your story, Vince?
Well, my story, I was in the Barbados Volunteer Force in Barbados. And when this Canada asked for volunteers, I understood, from Barbados, I volunteered. I just volunteered because...
Why?
Well, I was already a soldier, and soldier was in my blood, and I wanted to go. So I volunteered and hoped that I would pass the medical. So I passed the medical in Barbados, and then I was holding my breath that I would pass it up when I got up here. And I got up here, and I passed it up here, and I was a soldier from then on.
Now, it was a different world when you gentlemen joined and became part of the military. First of all, there weren't a lot of blacks in the military. And what was that experience like in dealing with others you had to deal with?
Well, unfortunately, in my specific case, as I said before, there were 38 of us who came up in that specific contingent. And the majority of us were stationed at Huntingdon for our basic training. And we were all together in the same unit, so to speak. So we didn't feel too strange because we had 35 or 36 other brothers, quote unquote, to play with, talk with, and discuss old times.
We should also mention at this point that not all the members who came out from the Caribbean were black. And there were others who came out who were part of the military who are of a white background. There are whites who live in the Caribbean, 20%, and they came out as well, including this gentleman, I believe?
Yeah.
And this gentleman is who, Owen?
His name is Neville Murray of Trinidad, and he had the distinction of being a squadron leader in the Royal Canadian Air Force and also of being awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, which was presented to him by King George V.
I think we have that picture.
That's a picture of, there's King George V, His Majesty, pinning the medal, Distinguished Flying Cross, on squadron leader Neville Murray of Trinidad.
So there were a lot of people who were also decorated. We noticed some medals when we were talking to Leo a little while. We noticed some medals on you, Vince. Tell us about the medals that are on you right there.
The medals there are the Canadian Volunteer Medal, and France, Germany, Britain Medal.
You see if we can pan down to the medals that you're wearing right there?
Yeah. Yes. This is the Canadian medal.
Right.
That's a medal. This is the Britain medal. This is here we are now. This is what the hell? I can't remember what they named them all, but
all
this
well
is
earned.
European medal, and there's
a medal
the only one that's really a medal is that one.
Right.
But all the rest are campaign medals.
Now, you gentlemen had an opportunity to come back. Some people did not come back, as we were talking to Leo about his brother.
Correct.
Some people were also captured.
That's right.
Now, who is this gentleman here?
That man, his name is William Rodriguez, and he came from St. Kitts in the Caribbean. And shortly after he completed his training in Canada, he was sent to Hong Kong. And lo and behold, the Japanese invaded Hong Kong, and he was captured. And for the duration of the year, he was absolutely treated horribly. He became like a skeleton when he returned to Canada. William Rodriguez.
Okay. Now, how many people, how many members of the military came from the West Indies?
About 350 came up here.
Mostly from which islands?
All the islands: Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, Antigua, Dominica, etc. The distinction of this gentleman here, his name is Leslie Brown of Jamaica, is this: he was the very first one from the Caribbean who enlisted in the Canadian Army. He was on the Canadian Merchant Navy, Lady Somers. He heard about the war. Canada declared war on September the 10th, 1939. He booked off the ship in Montreal the very next day and enlisted in the Canadian Army. Leslie Brown of Jamaica.
Do you guys get to hang out at all? I mean, the war was many, many years ago, and I've got to say this. I know you mentioned earlier, Owen, that there are not a lot of you left, but you guys look, you're in great shape. I mean, I think it's hard to believe that the war was 60 years ago.
Well, sometimes, man, I look at myself, I am amazed. And I'm still alive, much less look as well as I do.
That's right. That's right.
No, we used to hang out together initially back in the late 40s, 50s. We used to have reunions and whatnot. And it's only in recent years, of course, that there's so few of us that we have an organization called the West Indian, I think,
Veterans Association, which I started.
And there are not too many of us left. There are only about 6 or 7 of us left.
Yeah.
Because the contingent in which I came up totaled 38. And of the 38, I'm sure there are only about 6 of us left.
Correct.
Now, this picture goes back to when?
It goes back to April 1964.
Okay.
when he was the Eastern Caribbean Commissioner in Canada. That's a diplomatic appointment.
And you mentioned my uncle, so I'll point him out.
Yes.
You mentioned it. That's my uncle right there.
You're right, Bert Holder. Bert Holder was your
Oh,
uncle.
Yeah, we're just almost out of time, but I
Yes.
do have to ask you very quickly,
Yes.
what important message do you want to say to the youth who have no idea about what you guys went through and what you did
We
for
would
this
like
country?
to say that certainly with me, what I am today was honed by the discipline that was instilled in me during my training in the war.
And I understand that they're going to commemorate the work that you guys did as part of the Caribbean with a plaque.
Yes, the Canadian War Museum, they are going to have a plaque to honor us for all time.
I thank you, gentlemen, for being in studio with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you.